Hello, everyone. My name is Alan Harned. I'm with Virginia Clean Cities in Harrisonburg, Virginia. We work very closely with the Energy Office and are our celebrating many years of service after stepping into alternative and clean transportation in the Commonwealth of Virginia in 1996. I'm grateful to be here with all of you as we roll out informational sessions about a critical program, an exciting program as the Commonwealth of Virginia and its state energy office take steps to allow communities and technology providers to join in a charger deployment program. We have funding available as suggested in the recent legislative actions at the federal level, the Infrastructure and Jobs Act, and other legislation have led energy offices to have additional transportation roles. And I'm very proud of the Commonwealth stepping forward with the Electric Vehicle Charging Assistance Program. And I am grateful to be joined here today by Greg from the Virginia Clean Cities team, by Vince from the Virginia Energy team, by Aaron Puryear from our electric utility team, Amy from the Alexandria team, and Trey from the Charlottesville team. This is intended to be a presentation or a chance for folks to learn about the program and then also learn why programs like this are important to all communities in the Commonwealth of Virginia. You try to reach a map from edge to edge, and Virginia has a lot of edges, a lot of electric utilities to collaborate with, a lot of communities, a lot of electric vehicle operators. And so we're going to get into this program with a team approach. I do want to introduce Vince Maiden with the Virginia Energy Office to lead us off with a few key elements of this program.
Yeah, thanks, Alan. So as Alan said, my name is Vince Maiden. I'm with the Virginia Energy in the State Energy Office. I'm the Transportation Program Manager, and I helped stand up this EVCAP, we're calling it, Electric Vehicle Charging Assistance Program. I just kind of want to give you a little overview of where the money's coming from and why we're doing it. I am in Richmond, but as you can tell by my accent, I hail from the Appalachia originally. And I have a heart for rural and small communities, and that's what this program is geared towards. It doesn't exclude others necessarily, but that's kind of the intent of the program. We get State Energy Office gets federal funding every year to help run programs, pay for staff, and as part of the IIJA, as some like to call it, or the BIL, we got additional funding in which our team had to come up with projects and programs that would really fit the needs in Virginia. And one of the needs that I kept hearing from rural communities was we need some level 2 dwell time charging in our communities to serve tourists, to serve the local community, and really just to help the economy, help attract electric vehicle users and things like that. So with that, I propose within our office this program, which is going to be about $1.1 million spent over 4 years. The Secretary of Commerce and Trade Office was in and bought in on this, and so we are standing up this program. The awards will be up to $400,000. That sounds like a lot, but it doesn't go very far sometimes when you're putting in equipment and doing installations. But I really do think under this program we can maximize that. And the 1.1 million is a starter. I hope this program can find additional funding down the road. So we dropped our original request for proposals for subawards, and the eligible applicants are, originally we were thinking a lot of EV charging companies that are installers, but also really making sure that they're working in partnership with local government and other partners that would also be eligible to lead, but would really need to show that partnership and that they can get these plugs in the ground. So the eligible activities are primarily the installation of EV chargers. So that's what this program is all about. We would like to see as many plugs in the ground operational as possible out of this fund, with a focus on disadvantaged and rural communities. So the meeting the Justice 40 requirements of the federal funding and all the other requirements is still part of this program. But that's the big picture. And we stood up a website, which on this website, if you look, so the text part you can scroll through is guidance, information about the program. Over on the right under the news, you see application. We formatted what we think is a pretty simple application with all the information you need to apply for this program. We're limiting that to like 10 pages, but I do not need to read a novel. Just, make sure we know what you're doing and why you're doing it and who it helps. The terms and conditions, you need to be aware of those. Those are the federal terms and conditions that if you're selected, you will have to adhere to. So consider those as you're putting your proposal together, but you're not necessarily agreeing to those until you win and we go under contract. I do have my contact information on the page, and we have an email box, which is evcap@energy.virginia.gov. That's where your proposals will be sent. That's where your questions can be sent. And our technical support is the great team at Clean Cities who's going to take over and kind of walk you through what this application and process looks like. So I'm going to kick it back to Alan with that.
Well, I'm excited to share some details about this program, and also to emphasize the Commonwealth would like everybody to apply. There is a wide range of electric vehicle charging equipment that would be ideal from those vendors' perspectives or from collaborators' perspectives to get out in the Commonwealth of Virginia. We have some really great opportunities here, and the more people that apply, the more competitive we would hope your applications will also be, so that we can get more work done for more people. Proposal components are intended to be very simple. The name and the contact information is always key. Project title and project target area, prior related work showing experience, and funding requested. The project area does request a detailed description of the proposed project areas if possible, and a list of sites if possible. Community analysis and Justice 40 analysis is aligned with this. The government intends to spend 40% of programming to benefit disadvantaged communities, and these areas of need are outlined in Executive Order 14008. And this cross-cutting requirement, this is a requirement across many grants and federal programs. The project scope and budget will incorporate, we've got some templates, but it will incorporate elements of a project description, the scope of work for the installation of these chargers, the budget detail, line item budget detail, associating with the project phases broken down in major categories and expenses, and other notes of sources of funding in case you intend to use other funding than this project. Cost share. This project allows up to 80% state share. However, everyone is welcome to put forward more competitive programs. This is the chance for you to show the Commonwealth the best possible deal for the installation of electric vehicle chargers. Time frame. This would be the proposed suggested time schedule for the sections of the scope of work, as well as experience. The Commonwealth will want to know the past work of your firms and your partnerships that you've completed for electric vehicle charging. And there's a space and a desire, of course, for special detail for experience within the Commonwealth of Virginia. Our third part is an economic impact and a space for leveraged funding dialogue. We will ask you to briefly describe how the project will benefit the economics of the project area. We will seek information on a community engagement process. This would be other processes for identifying sites, locations, including facilitating input from the public, local governments, and community-based organizations. And we'll also seek leveraged funding detail. There is a large federal tax credit associated with these areas. There may be utility funding or private funding that companies who manufacture and distribute and install these chargers could put forward to allow the Commonwealth to get more chargers done for less federal and state dollars. Our fourth part does ask, if applicable, to please describe how the project will use local workers or Justice 40 community workers, as well as paying prevailing wages for areas in the Commonwealth of Virginia. We seek information on how workers from various communities, including women, people of color, veterans, formerly incarcerated or dislocated workers, indigenous people, low wealth communities, environmental justice communities, energy communities, or other important communities will be impacted. Or communities impacted by fossil fuel plant closures would benefit from this project. There are additional documents. The Commonwealth of Virginia does want to know the name of the organization detailed, and we have a special W-9. It is very similar to the federal W-9, but it has the seal of Virginia on it. So I just want to emphasize that there will be a W-9 completed financial capabilities questionnaire, a federal SF-424 form, audit certification form, and copy of recent audits, and verification of other sources of funding that will support the project, such as letters of support or emphasis. I'm excited to share that I am not responsible for this program. Matt Wade, Vince Maiden, Russell Presnell, and Greg Brennan with the team are working key on this. So you can talk to me about the fun stuff, and a lot of the technical stuff will also be going through Russell, Vince, and Greg. But I do want to pass this over to Greg to continue on some of these program details.
Thanks, Alan. Yeah, so I'm just going to go over quickly some reporting requirements. So you'll need to report quarterly to Virginia Energy. You'll be the chargers. Public charging will be detailed on the app and PlugShare, which will include site and photos. That's something we've run into before with chargers that are installed. We don't have the chargers that are like photos of the chargers in location. So something we've added here. Reporting will utilize census poverty data, the electric vehicle charging Justice 40 map, and the EPA EJ40 screening tool to identify and prioritize EVSE siting in high poverty or EJ40 communities. We have those links in the next slide. I'll show you here shortly of those maps and those that data that you have to use. Installation reports shall include cost share details, information on additional leverage funding, and a summary of potential economic benefits to the area or where they're being installed. Similar to what Vince said, is about getting them rural and areas that have been disadvantaged historically. Another one is details on long-term maintenance and operations plans must be included. And lastly, awards will be required to be meeting all terms of conditions and funding, as well as provide documentations of compliance with Build America, Buy America Act, and Davis-Bacon prevailing wage requirements when requested. Next slide, please. So here are those tools I was talking about. The Climate and Economic Justice Screening Tool, which is on the top right here, and you can see the URL there. Again, we will post this to YouTube afterwards, and all these links can be found on the website, the EVCAP website. Then on the bottom right, in an energy justice dashboard, within that blue, and then on the very bottom, the Virginia EJ screen, which says more purple. Just a helpful way to divide out, and these tools are meant to help us find areas that have been historically disadvantaged or low income, yeah, you know what I'm saying. Next slide, please. So with that, here's the website again. This is a QR code that will take you directly to it if you want to scan it now. The email is there as well. There's a small typo. It should be Virginia, not Virginage, which is not a big deal. But we have a few special guests that are going to talk today. And I think up first, we have Aaron Perrier.
Thank you, Greg. And I'll just keep us rolling through our special guests. Sorry about the typo. I wanted to clarify that obviously is Virginia. And then I have started to annotate, so I lost control. But I do want to pass it over to our first special guest with regards to electric cooperatives and electric vehicle charging in Virginia. We have many electric utilities, and I also regret that I left this annotation on there. So please, please take it from here, Aaron.
Great, thank you, and thank you for asking me to come talk about EV charging and how that plays a role with electric cooperatives. Let's go on to the next slide, please. For those of you who are not familiar with ODEC and the Virginia Electric Cooperatives, ODEC, we are the not-for-profit generation and transmission cooperative. We are the power supplier to 11 electric distribution cooperatives in Virginia. We have 9 in Virginia, 1 in Maryland, and 1 in Delaware. We have over 600,000 meters serving 1.5 million people. There are actually 14 electric cooperatives in the Commonwealth of Virginia. 9 of those are in the ODEC family. Next slide. This is a map of the service territories of the electric cooperatives. And as you can see, we've got a lot of rural areas, particularly in the southern part of the state and then up in the northern area. We also cover the entire Virginia portion of the eastern shore and a portion of the northern neck. Next slide. Cooperatives are different than your investor-owned utilities. We are owned by the members we serve. Owned and governed, and because of that, our shareholders are our end-use consumers. So we have a goal to minimize cost, our cost, the wholesale power cost, to keep electric bills affordable. We focus on the members' needs, and we operate under the 7 cooperative principles. For those of you who want to know what those are, let us know, and we'll send them out to you afterwards. Next slide. So these are some questions and challenges as we look in the rural nature of our service territories and how best to address public charging. So I guess one of the first questions is, how quickly will EV penetration in rural communities grow? At what point does public charging in these rural communities with less population density make economic sense? And then, is there enough utilization of the charging to justify the cost? So programs like this EVCAP are very advantageous for electric cooperatives. If I'm understanding correctly, there would be a need to partner with the localities in which we serve, but I think this is a really good opportunity for us. Next slide. I wanted to address a little bit about what cooperatives are doing so far. Apart from charging, we've had a big focus over the past few years on education, both education for our cooperative staff and then for the end-use member. For example, we have a Choose EV tool on all of our cooperatives' website that provides a ton of information on the electric vehicles themselves, on the different types of EVs, the different types of charging. There is a comparison calculator to compare any ICE vehicle with any EV out there. We have a dealer locator tool that informs members where they can find EV dealerships across the state. And then, one of the messages we want to get across to the members is, if you were going to install level 2 charging in your home, please let your electric cooperative be aware of that, because sometimes there's some updates that need to be made on the electrical systems. In the EV charging space, we're really excited to announce that A&N, which is our electric cooperative on the Eastern Shore, has installed 2 of these pole-mounted level 2 chargers. They're dual port chargers. We have one in the town of Chincoteague and one in Nancock. And then a third one's going to be installed in the town of Cape Charles by the spring of this year. Rappahannock Electric Cooperative is also going to be installing a pole-mounted charger early this year. We have a number of cooperatives that have installed level 2 charging at their headquarter offices. Some of those chargers are available and accessible to the public. We have a couple that have kind of put it behind the gate for their fleet vehicles that they have. Next slide. ODEC has also purchased a tool we called the EV Toolkit. It is developed and maintained by UC Davis. The objective of this tool is to help identify the optimal location for EV chargers based on adoption rates, the number of commuters, how many will be charging in places away from their homes. We're currently in an upgrade mode of that, getting some current DMV data so that we can make sure we've got very accurate information in there. And then kind of a new development, Rappahannock and ODEC are working with, Rappahannock's taking the lead and ODEC is just supporting them with Louisa County Public Schools. They have EV operations and maintenance foundational training program that will be kicking off early this year. So we're excited about that particular program, getting some folks trained for the maintenance of the chargers themselves. So I'll be glad to answer any questions at the end. Thanks.
Aaron, thank you so much. And to all, just one more commercial for the Q&A bubble question process to type in questions. I also want to pass on to Amy Posner, electric vehicle planner for the city of Alexandria, as we hear from a few localities about the need for more charging collaboration. Amy.
Thanks, Alan, and thanks for having me. I'll start out by just kind of referencing the cornerstone of a document of Alexandria's EV planning efforts. That's our electric vehicle charging infrastructure readiness strategy. And this is really kind of our roadmap to help us understand how we can promote the adoption of EVs in our community and meet the charging needs in the future. And so on the next slide, I'm going to show you how we're using the analysis from the EVRS to really guide our approach for how we're going to install publicly accessible chargers in Alexandria. So the contractor that helped us with the EVRS conducted an analysis of how many public chargers that we would need in the city to meet the demand under different policy scenarios. So both kind of local and federal policy levels. So what I'm showing here is the most aggressive policy scenario, where we would need about 800 level 2 public chargers and 200 public DC fast chargers by 2050. And so the cities, we're not obviously responsible for installing every single one of those chargers, but, while the market's still maturing, it is definitely important for us to install some chargers on city property, especially for about half of our population that lives in multifamily dwellings or does not have a driveway or a garage for their own charger. So they would be, definitely more reliant on public chargers and need more of them in the ground in order to make the jump to get the EV. And the good news is that there are a lot of interested parties out there to help cities install publicly accessible chargers. So in October of last year, in 2023, we issued a request for industry information, an RFI, for both installing chargers for our municipal fleet as well as for public charging infrastructure. And we received responses from 23 different firms that were interested in providing public charging services. And so these firms, had a range of business models, from providing the chargers at no cost, where, the vendor kind of owns the equipment, and others where the city would own the equipment, and kind of different options for revenue sharing, along that rainbow. So, again, there are definitely partners out there that want to partner with cities to help get these chargers in the ground for folks. But, these types of grants, I think, are critically important to ensure that we're getting chargers everywhere, especially in areas that are historically marginalized or disadvantaged and under-resourced. Putting a charger in Old Town in Alexandria is easy, but these grants will help get chargers in areas where the EV adoption level might be lower, but still a very necessary resource. I have one more slide that just to plug the NREL Clean Energy to Communities cohort. So Alexandria was lucky enough to be selected for the most recent cohort on EV infrastructure deployment. We're one of maybe 15 or 16 cities around the country that participated in this cohort, lasted about 6 months, where really NREL and the World Resources Institute kind of walked through a lot of different exercises with the goal of allowing municipalities and their partner Clean Cities coalitions to kind of refine or create EV readiness plans. So, they walk through different exercises like using EV Pro Lite to understand your need for charging under different adoption scenarios, really helping you set that baseline for what is your target of chargers that you need over time, as well as looking at, how to consider equity in your planning, evaluating kind of your permitting and your codes for when you're installing chargers. And it was definitely a great driving force to consider issues that I, hadn't really touched yet while implementing our EVRS strategy. And the good news is, from what I understand from the organizers, is that they're planning to make the materials from the cohort public so that others folks can benefit. Because I think I know there was other interest from other municipalities in Virginia. So the good news is that the kind of exercises and resources should be made available to really help support folks go through the planning process themselves. I think that's it. So yeah, I'll take any questions at the end.
Thank you so much. And we have one more municipal engagement to share. And so I want to recognize Trey Biasoli with the city of Charlottesville. Trey, thank you.
Great. Thanks for having me on, Alan. I'm happy to be here this afternoon. I'm talking about our EV charging infrastructure program in the city of Charlottesville. So back in 2013, before my tenure with the city, we launched an EV infrastructure grant program. And there was some initial enthusiasm about that when it was first launched. We funded a couple of DC fast chargers close to the downtown mall and a couple of level 2 chargers. And then a couple of years after the launch of that, the interest in it waned. And it was probably sufficient to meet the charging needs in the city of Charlottesville for a number of years. Recently, we revisited this and saw that our charging needs were not being met any longer. So we relaunched this program just a few months ago at the end of 2023. And this program provides funding for publicly accessible charging stations located within the city limits. It covers up to 30% of costs, maximum of $4,000 for level 2 charging, and up to $10,000 for DC fast charging stations. And it can certainly, and we encourage stacking with other incentive programs, be it EVCAP or federal incentives or utility-based incentive programs, whatever options are available, we certainly encourage charging station providers to go ahead and take advantage of those in addition to the incentives that we're able to provide. There's a list, there's an application form and further details that are available on our website, which is listed at the bottom of that slide there. So if you're interested in that, please take a look or reach out to me directly by email. Next slide, Alan. Similar to what Alexandria completed a couple of years ago, we're just beginning a community EV charging infrastructure project jointly with Albemarle County, the county that surrounds the city of Charlottesville. And I think Amy described it pretty well in that it goes ahead and takes maybe a 20 to 25 year look at projections for EV adoption and what sort of charging infrastructure needs we need in the ground in order to go ahead and facilitate widespread adoption within the community and in a way that is accessible to residents and visitors who don't have access to reliable at-home charging. So in the bottom left, that's a map of the current available and functional EV chargers, DC fast chargers in orange and the level 2 chargers in green that are within the city limits of Charlottesville. So as you can tell, that's a lot of the city limits that are not covered particularly well by charging at this point in time. Most of the charging is obviously being done at home right now. So in order to expand beyond that base of homeowners, we really need to go ahead and develop publicly accessible charging in a way that meets the needs of our large rental community as well. So as part of this project, sorry, go back a second, Alan. There's going to be a lot of outreach and stakeholder engagement, and that's going to involve residents, employers, and also charging providers to understand what opportunities and what limitations they have in terms of doing business within the city of Charlottesville. We really want to hear from folks in terms of ways that we can make Charlottesville a more inviting place for charging providers to go ahead and provide services here. So next slide, please, Alan. So to emphasize, we're still seeing very rapid growth in EV adoption here in Charlottesville. It was actually the #2 locality in the state of Virginia in terms of EV market penetration in 2022, and actually the second highest market penetration anywhere east of the Mississippi River. So 1 out of 6 vehicles sold to Charlottesville residents were EVs in 2022, and I anticipate that number was even higher in 2023. So in order to go ahead and continue this rate of growth that we've seen and expand EV adoption beyond just the homeowners that have access to home charging, we really need infrastructure to expand at a similar pace. And thus far, it really has been a much slower climb in terms of the EV charging infrastructure availability. And lastly, next slide, please, Alan. I really want to emphasize that, and this is the incentive for Charlottesville's EV infrastructure grant. EV charging can really be an economic development opportunity for communities. And charging station providers can absolutely help communities capitalize on those existing resources that already draw residents, visitors, tourists to their localities. So this is, as an icebreaker during a pre-webinar meeting that we had, Alan asked us about some of our favorite EV charging experiences. And this is one of my favorite ones. I was on a road trip with my family up to Western Maryland, rural Western Maryland, 2 years ago. And we stopped to charge our car at a public park there. It had a trail nearby, and we stopped, got out, and we're like, this is a great place to stretch our legs. Turns out we were totally unfamiliar with it, but it was along the C&O Canal Trail and the Great Allegheny Passage Trail, a bike trail that runs all the way from Washington to Pittsburgh, 330 miles. We had no idea. We said, oh, this is great. We should come back here and take advantage of this. So that's a photo of us, my family, last spring break. We spent our spring break biking along the Great Allegheny Passage Trail. So, just because of the availability of EV charging there, we found out about this resource that we wanted to take advantage of and spend money in that community. So not every community that you're going to work in is going to have infrastructure grant money to go ahead and help put chargers in the ground, but maybe there are other ways that they can go ahead and help facilitate the process if you are able to communicate to them, we want to do this in a way that enhances economic development opportunities in your community. So that's not really Charlottesville specific, but I think it's an important message that we need to communicate as we're trying to get more chargers into the ground here. So, and again, I'll take questions at the end as well.
And with this, we did want to open this up for questions. I wanted to encourage folks to use the Q&A session. And I do want to apologize because Virginia Energy does have the procurement open. There may be some questions that become all the questions will be added to this publication, but there may be some questions that do take some time to get back to everybody on. But the first question is, can the chargers be free or user paid? There are some federal programs that do require chargers to have a payment. Things like the DOT NEVI program or the CFI program, they do require credit card readers. But Vince, do you want to chime in on the inquiry of, can the chargers be free or user paid?
Yeah, I don't think we have a restriction. So if it's your model to provide free charging to folks, then I don't see a reason that couldn't be part of this program and part of a project that someone proposes.
And we did run an analysis of chargers in the Commonwealth of Virginia a few years ago, and a lot of early community chargers, about half of the chargers in the Commonwealth at the time were free. User paid, also eligible. Thank you. And you cannot let us off the hook this easy with just one question.
Alan, you might go to some of the answered questions too and go over some of those answers for folks.
Sorry about that. We'll go right back to that. I do have a question of, must charger installations be complete before EVCAP funds are issued? And so that gets into the reimbursement-based grant. Vince, do you want to answer that one?
Yeah, so these would be reimbursement based. So you would enter into a contract, a subaward essentially, with Virginia Energy. And as part of that subaward, you would be allocated funds or committed funds, but they would be on a reimbursement basis. You would invoice once work is completed. Yes.
A quick moderator note through the answered questions. Will the slides be available? In addition to recording the presentation, we will also PDF the slides after correcting the typo that I put in with regards to the email account. And then anybody who, we will do our best to email everybody a copy of the presentation, but you will also be able to see it on the Virginia Clean Cities website as soon as the video is properly processed. And then there is a note about, is it envisioned that utilities would be primary applicants or that other EV companies would be primary applicants? And Vince, you answered that. Do you want to chime that one in? And I'll just say that Vince said that it could be a utility partnering with an installer doing charging or charging companies that have built partnerships that meet these goals. Bottom line is the program does not prohibit applications. That was why it was intended to be both the private sector and municipalities being able to apply in case a municipality was the utility. For example. But bottom
Yeah.
line, charging installed is to be open to the public. Vince?
Yeah, so sorry I was a little slow to the unmute. But yeah, we really wanted to leave it up to some creative proposals and eligible entities making those partnerships. So I think we're open to a lot of options. Who leads it? I think you're going to have a partnership with some installer. It's going to be needed, but that's kind of up to you how you package the proposal.
And I am still just going through a few components, but I will say that another question that came in through the chat was, does the program require chargers to be installed on public land, or is private land acceptable provided that it's generating traffic? And the response that went into that was that chargers should be publicly accessible. That could be public or private land, as long as they're open to the public. And I will say that in the Commonwealth of Virginia, you certainly want to look at both if you're getting involved in this work with from an installer's perspective. In addition to public land, there's a lot of accessible parking spaces that are corporately owned or owned outside the public, and procurement and collaborations with municipalities does sometimes take some extra time. So just a little encouragement to that. There are a bunch of additional questions that are coming in, so I'm going to keep running through these. Any requirement that the chargers be networked, or can they be dumb chargers? So that would be, does there need to be a financial payment system? And I will chime in that is similar to another of the questions. And I see that Vince is typing answer. So before I double speak, I'll just pass to Vince.
Yeah, I was just going to say that, we would love to have metrics from utilization, but if dumb chargers are what you need, we would entertain that. I do think there are some great, let's just call them semi-smart chargers out there that give you that option of data without charging people funds. So maybe there's some in the middle, but it would not be excluded necessarily.
And I would just note that in addition to cellular networks, there's also Wi-Fi networks and hardline networks. There should be a website from the EPA's Energy Star that lists a bunch of Energy Star chargers, and networking is one of the Energy Star goals. Is there one application per locality or per company?
We did not set a restriction on that. So, just realize it's competitive. So you're going to want to put in competitive proposals that, are going to give you a leg up. I do anticipate and hope that we are overprescribed and have to go look for more money to meet the demand. So just keep that in mind, that you may want to put your best, foot forward instead of just throwing a lot of things onto the wall and see which one sticks, but not restricted.
Are there strategies or best practices to influence local government officials to incorporate EV charger infrastructure into their capital improvement plans? I would note that the Commonwealth of Virginia does have a requirement for municipalities based on certain sizes to have electric vehicle ready construction for new build of certain buildings at the state or local government level. But I wonder, Amy or Trey, if you would have any suggestions for strategies and best practices that local government officials may like to hear for EV charger infrastructure in capital or capital improvement plans.
Yeah, I'll jump on. We actually just went through a zoning code revision in the city of Charlottesville, and one of the things that we in the climate office, and then also we heard about from the community a lot, was the need for EV ready construction. So that's something that, as a Dillon rural estate, there's not a lot of things we can require, but we can require EV ready construction standards in terms of the number of spots that are either EV ready or have the charging infrastructure actually installed as a percentage or number of parking spots in new developments. So that's certainly one way through the zoning code that you can work with localities and sort of build support for more EV infrastructure.
And I can just add that I think having that readiness strategy and this our EVRS plan was really critical for getting support from our city council and our local officials for supporting efforts to increase the adoption of EVs in the community and creating an EV planner position in the city. So at least in Alexandria, there's a big interest in partnering with firms that will install public chargers at no cost to the city up front. It's also, we're going after a lot of this grant funding. So we have support, but again, there's just kind of a push now to focus on minimizing the costs from the city to put in funding for public charging.
Another question came in inquiring if chargers can use the NACS, the North American Charger Standard. This has now been adopted up and down through the auto industry, through many vehicles and automakers. The draft language did not have a prohibition on this, but Vince, I didn't know if you had anything you wanted to share about NACS access.
Yeah, no prohibition. So we want to fit the community need and the area need and the project need. So
are there any operational requirements for the chargers, such as do they need to be used for X hours a day or annual mileage of charged vehicles to be in such and such a county? I will note that because federal money is tied to this, we certainly can't install chargers and then remove them on any short-term basis. They do need to last and be in public and actionable, so the networks can't turn off, for example, during these operational periods, and there is reporting requirements. But with regards to any specific target, I did also want to mention that that is very difficult to achieve. There is some uptime requirements for some much larger federal funded programs. And at this time, this is Department of Energy funding instead of Department of Transportation funding. So we also are not directly tied to those requirements as of yet. But Vince, is there anything that you would like to share about operational requirements for chargers?
yeah, and I avoided any kind of very specific restrictions because this program is intended to help all communities, even communities that may not have a lot of utilization up front. So we do realize and recognize that, but we would like to, be able to have reporting that they are being utilized, they are active, that sort of thing as part of the program.
Is Virginia working with the National Park System to provide accessibility to install on park lands? The National Park System does operate a number of facilities in the Commonwealth, and Virginia Clean Cities has partnered with Shenandoah National Park, for example, for chargers at Big Meadows. This partnership is also capable of having like a direct bridge between those federal agencies, the U.S. Department of Energy directly to the National Park System. So there are some other programs that will further align. Park lands require a networked paid charger, and they require a vendor agreement with the park. Those vendor solicitations, it is not anticipated that the timelines for those are going to be directly in line with this. The Commonwealth of Virginia would be happy to engage with any park or federal agency if additional work is needed for those park lands.
Alan, I was going to answer one that came in that maybe some folks don't have the expertise or the knowledge to get through the application process. And my answer to that would be Virginia Clean City staff are available to provide technical assistance. And that would include helping folks that can't navigate the application process or need help with what type of documentation is appropriate. I don't know how you want to receive those kind of requests, but maybe you can elaborate.
Our intent with this program is to make it simple. So I will offer a level of technical assistance that may be necessary to explain some of these templates. I will reiterate that what I've heard from Virginia Energy is that the eligible work here is putting in electrical outlets that have or don't have a payment system on them. And so I would also offer to meet and further supply any community with the templates and tools that Amy mentioned, such as the EVI Pro Tool Lite to calculate chargers, or bridge with the site design tools that Aaron mentioned, or other tools. So just happy to offer help in that regards. Virginia Clean Cities is accessible at vacleancities.org, but we'll also be happy to engage with that. I see a note about this being an annual grant. There was an influx of funding from a large federal climate bill, and I see that Vince is also typing an answer, and it is the hope of the Commonwealth of Virginia to have many clean transportation programs. I would just I'll say that the funding of about 1.1 million is very significant in the terms of the Commonwealth of Virginia and in terms of the energy offices, both in Virginia and nationwide, for these efforts. And the hope would be to keep that coming, because Virginia loses about $45 million every day in the purchase of oil. So there's a great opportunity financially to engage with this.
Alan, I'll add that, this was a significant commitment of this additional funding. This was about 10% of all the additional funding for all energy programs and supporting the energy office that came out of that. So it is a one-time thing for now. I did build the program as a vessel that could find additional funding, whether it be from that source or others, that we could offer additional opportunities later on that may have slightly different guidelines, but just treat this one as, here's the guidelines for this sub-award solicitation, and future solicitations, are not guaranteed. But yeah, thanks for that question.
I see a note here from that is an inquiry into available tools to visualize population and apartment density in areas. And I will mention that there is a tool. There are population data sets at census.gov that can be utilized, but there is a tool that overlays electric vehicle chargers, and that is called the GEM tool, the Geographic Energy Mapping tool. And I will paste that into the, I will actually type, I will ask if Greg, if you're able to grab the GEM tools link and type that in as an answer, just because I guess I can stop my sharing and go ahead and do that. Do we have any other additional questions? One inquiry with regards to the application deadline, and I will say that it is on the slides earlier, but I'm going to say it is February 16th. And if I got that wrong, somebody can shout me down, because I did close that slide down.
Yes, February 16th is correct. Just to confirm.
The Commonwealth does reserve the ability to do partial awards or not award the complete funding from this 1.1 million, and then to have additional rounds with this.
Yeah, what that means is you could put in a proposal for, the entire 400,000, and then we've looked at it. We have a lot of competitive proposals, and instead of, leaving out more people, we would reduce potentially the offer. So we could offer you, 250 or 300,000 instead of the full request. So we did want to leave that ability for the program to spread our efforts as much as we could to good projects.
With regards to any tools that are mentioned by any of the speakers or that go into the chat, such as that geographic energy mapping tool, we would be happy to provide hands-on assistance for a community to activate and use those tools, or for a technology provider.
And now there's a question on the awards and the matching funds. So the way the program's set up is that we do require at least 20% cost share. And that is, I say at least, because folks may want to do 50% cost share because it makes it makes sense financially for them. It makes sense that they would want the competitive advantage. You could have additional leveraging included in your proposals. So that is, just the minimum cost share is 20. And that cost share can come from the private sector, from co-ops, from, whatever entity wants to put that cost share in can do that. We just do need to require that cost share.
There's a question about the vehicle weight range that is applicable for charging. I would emphasize that with the scale of this program, we are looking at light duty vehicle charging as far as the cost of the infrastructure and the sites, and also gap filling across a very large Commonwealth. I did want to mention that site design could allow for any size vehicle to be repowered on equipment of this nature, such as having a site design that allows for a pull-through, or utilizing high capacity level 2 chargers, which go all the way up to 19.2 kilowatts and are pretty low cost. There's a note if the funding can be used for various aspects of the project, such as grading, site prep, concrete, utilities, etc. And if equipment vendors cover the costs and owns the equipment. And so again, there are going to be portions that are requested of the Commonwealth and portions that are offered as cost share. And you can detail those in your financial worksheets. There's a question with regards to the restriction on the timeline regarding when a site project starts. Does the application of EVCAP need to happen before or after official plans and or construction on a site has begun? I do want to note that federal funding does require environmental documents. We will need to notify the U.S. Department of Energy on a per site basis prior to any construction occurring. Oftentimes, electric vehicle charging is allowable as a categorical exclusion to the NEPA process if there is not significant work occurring. That is to say, electric vehicle chargers are often on posts in parking lots or near parking lots, areas that are already outside of, they're not in wetlands or other areas. But no federal money can be used on projects that have already begun due to some of these challenges. So that being said, if the project is proposing a installation in a site that's already been worked on but has accessible conduit, that is a best practice. So installing conduit as you do construction and then looking to grants, tax credits, or other programs as you do chargers is a good best practice. But you cannot get funding for a project that has already broken ground and pay for that groundbreaking in federal space. And Vince, I don't know if you have anything to add for that.
Type in an answer, but yeah, so just be aware that, so all work paid for under this program is going to be after you're going to get, so you're going to apply, right? We're going to say, well, we intend to award you an award. Then we would enter into negotiations. You would enter into a contract with Virginia Energy. This contract would lay out all the rules of the road, all the federal and state terms and conditions of your award. And that's your guide to how the process works and what the requirements are. We would not be able to reimburse work that's already occurred. So this is all work moving forward, not looking back. So it is not a reimbursement program. And as Alan said, there are also other requirements before things are put in the ground. So I just wanted to reemphasize that.
There was an inquiry whether this was a first come, first serve basis, and the Commonwealth is expecting applications to be delivered on and then will not be reviewed until after the delivery date. So this will be a cohort approach to all the applications. There may be some awarded and there may be others, but it does not specifically operate on a first come, first serve basis. That said, there may be some contract negotiations or details from the Commonwealth of Virginia that open up another round of this application in the months ahead, or additional, there is a hope for additional funding in the months and years ahead. So there would be other times.
Yeah, and Alan, it's just kind of reemphasize, this is a competitive process and a competitive award. So we'll have a committee that looks at all the proposals once they come in and decide which ones are the best fit for the program at this time based on the amount of funding we have. If that amount of funding is not all expended in the first round, we would again do another round of requests. So it is competitive, not first come, first serve.
And with that, we've reached the 4 o'clock hour and are almost at the end. I will entertain this last question, the last two questions, but then we'll stop, respecting people's time and also respecting our editor's ability and his patience. Can the project include school parking lots, given many schools are in impacted areas? Yes, you would want to coordinate directly with those schools as well during the project. Schools often have electric school buses now, and those electric school buses even travel between districts. So that has been dialogued, and then the other one disappeared. So I'm just gonna say thank you all so much for your time today. If you could use additional information or tools, of course, please contact the team at Virginia Clean Cities. I want to thank Vince Maiden for the idea and the activation here and pulling this together. And I just want to thank you all for your time and compassion for this this initiative.
Now I look forward to seeing your applications. So thank you.
Thank you.